Today's topic, breathing and respiration. See, for a common man, understanding of respiration is something intake of oxygen, that is air, and release of carbon dioxide, which is in fact a kind of gaseous exchange. But the scientific meaning of respiration is actually a complex process which involves gaseous exchange, as well as breakdown of simple food. When we say gaseous exchange, it means intake of oxygen from the atmosphere and release of carbon dioxide. When we say breakdown of simple food, it means it is in order to release energy in the cells. Right, so these two separate processes may be termed as breathing as well as respiration. Moving to the concept of breathing and respiration. Now, what is breathing? A kind of ventilation process in which an organism takes oxygen from the environment and release carbon dioxide in the environment. But in higher organisms or in higher animals, breathing is regarded only as a rhythmic process, and it is due to the muscles and skeleton in order to increase the gaseous exchange across the respiratory surface, because we want oxygen there for the metabolic processes and to use energy. That energy which is required for the metabolic processes is always utilized when it is obtained from the breakdown of simple food, and that simple food is basically obtained from the complex organic food. So this entire process involves the first step, that is breathing, means the intake of oxygen from the environment and the release of carbon dioxide. Moving to the another term, cellular respiration. Why am I using the word cellular respiration? Because this complex process occurs inside the living cells. And it is the oxidation of the respiratory substrate. What do we have as a respiratory substrate? We have glucose. It is our respiratory substrate. It results in the release of CO2, energy, and surplus amount of water if there is any. Right. This process of conversion of glucose to these end products is known as cellular respiration, since it takes place in the cells of all the living organisms. Coming to this process of glucose breakdown in detail. When we talk about the types of cellular respiration, these are of two types, aerobic and anaerobic. As the name suggests, aerobic in the presence of air, anaerobic, that means in the lack of or the absence of air, oxygen, right? When we start breaking up this glucose molecule, which is a C6 molecule, what is C6? 6 molecules of carbon, right? In diverse organisms, it happens in different ways. Now, first of all, some use oxygen, that is in aerobic condition. This glucose is completely broken down to CO2 and water. Right. Some do not involve oxygen. That means this oxygen which is utilized here is not involved. Alright. And there, this breakdown of a 6 carbon molecule is done necessarily to produce lactic acid or ethanol. But what do we think? that this process takes up directly the way it is written? No. Glucose is first converted into an intermediate known as C3 compound, pyruvic acid, and then this or these end products are formed. So the formation of a C3 intermediate is always required in the process of cellular respiration. Taking up the process of respiration, a fate of glucose during respiration. We can name it as fate of glucose during respiration. Our glucose molecule is C6H12O6, right? It's a C6 compound. I'm writing it glucose C6 compound. In the cytoplasm of our cell, it gets converted to pyruvate, which is a 3-carbon molecule. It's a common process to all aerobic as well as anaerobic processes that we have to list up further. Now the C3 compound, along with there is release of energy. Fine. What happens next? This pyruvate molecule, in the absence of oxygen, when there is no oxygen, that takes place in yeast, it is converted to ethanol, which is C2H5OH, along with the release of CO2 and little energy. That energy is only 2 to 3 molecules of ATP, adenosine triphosphate. When we talk about, this is our first breakdown. Second breakdown of pyruvate is lack of oxygen. Initially we have given an environment where there is no oxygen. Here we are giving an environment which is having lack of oxygen. Where does it happen? In our muscles. In muscle cells. There, formation of lactic acid and energy takes place. Lactic acid is also a 3-carbon compound. And energy release here is also 2 to 3 ATP molecules. Clear? I'll discuss all these points. When we say there is formation of lactic acid, their conversion of this 3-carbon molecule causes cramps in our legs. And this happens due to an excessive external activity that we are involved in. ठीक है? कभी हम हिल्स पे जाके आते हैं, बहुत ज़्यादा वॉकिंग करते हैं, स्टोनस एक्सरसाइज करते हैं, फर्स्ट और सेकेंड डे ऑफ जिम होता है, जोश में होते हैं हम, एंड वी डू सो मच ऑफ एक्सरसाइज. तो जनरली व्हाट हैपन्स, योर बॉडी इज़ नॉट in a mood, or we can say in a position to spend so much of energy enormously, as your body in a definite routine of spending energy in little portions, right? And you put your body in such an environment where it has to show expenditure of energy immediately. So where to obtain all this oxygen from? Taking oxygen from all the body parts, then breakdown of this pyruvate into this lactic acid is only because of lack of oxygen, because you do not provide so much of definite work to your body, and ultimately that strenuous exercise ends up leading to the formation of lactic acid, and 2 to 3 ATP molecules of energy is released. That's why we feel that there are cramps in our muscles, we cannot walk properly, we cannot run, we feel stiffness in our legs. It's all because of the accumulation of lactic acid, right? Then the third case. Moving here to my third case, where I'm talking about the presence of oxygen. If oxygen is present, what will happen? This pyruvate molecule will completely break down to release carbon dioxide, water, and energy, that is ATP energy. 36 molecules. I'm not writing 38 molecules because 38 is in prokaryotes. And 36 ATP molecules in eukaryotes. Why? 2 ATP molecules are used up in the converting process. Now, this is immediately synthesized. It acts as a fuel to all our activities in the cell, and ATP is broken down to give a fixed amount of energy which is basically required for all the endothermic reactions that are taking place inside the cell. Now here the entire sum up is glucose in cytoplasm is converted to a 3-carbon molecule called pyruvate. Pyruvate undergoes 3 steps. First is in the absence of oxygen, second is in the lack of oxygen, third one is in the presence of oxygen. This one we know in muscle cells, this one in yeast. Where is this taking place? In mitochondria. Right. So this topic was fate of glucose during respiration. Right. Moving ahead to, since this oxygen is now available, how the breathing process takes place in detail. Coming to the breathing, that how do organisms obtain oxygen? Right. So this is our breathing process.